Hello. In this video, I'm going to go over some Zoom classroom management strategies. The majority of these strategies come in the form of settings that we can enable or disable before the meeting begins, along with in-meeting controls that we have. Understanding the power that we hold as the host is going to allow us to effectively run an online class with our students. If at any time you need help enabling or disabling settings, or you'd like to practice some in-meeting controls that you have, I would be more than happy to assist you in developing and building this online learning environment. There are several important Zoom settings that we're going to want to consider so we can run an effective online classroom and manage those Zoom rooms. Let's take a look at them. The first Zoom setting that I would enable is the waiting room. The waiting room is just going to place my participants in an empty room by themselves, and I can admit them when I'm ready. Another feature that you may want to consider is how are people joining the meeting? Are they joining with their video on? Are they joining with their audio on? This is personal preference, but I prefer that my video is off when I join and my participants' video is off when they join. This is going to allow the host and the participants to show themselves when they're ready. Another setting that I would encourage you to look at is to allow participants to join before the host. I always keep this off. I want to be the first one in my meeting, and then people can join once I'm ready. Muting all participants when they join, again, is personal preference. I like to keep everybody muted upon entry, especially if it's a large group, just so we're not overwhelmed with background noise. Participants can always unmute themselves when they're ready. The chat feature is definitely nice. We just need to make sure that we're managing it appropriately. You can see right now I have my chat on. So this is going to allow me to chat with students, and I want the students to be able to chat with me as well. The private chat is something that you're going to want to consider. When I'm dealing with students or a large group, I keep the private chat off. As the host, I can still privately chat with participants, and they can privately chat with the host. I just like to have this off because I don't want my participants privately chatting with each other. If you are on our upgraded licensed account, we now have access to polling. We can create polls before the meeting begins, and I can send those polls to my audience and get results and share those results with the entire class. So if you'd like to create polls, please make sure that this feature is turned on. Screen sharing is a great feature of Zoom, especially when I need to go over assignments or anything on Google Classroom. So please make sure that you have screen sharing on, and you can see right now who can share. Well, I have all participants can share. I don't know if I necessarily want all of my participants sharing their screen, so I'm going to make sure it says host only. I can always change this in meeting if I ever need students to share their screen. Annotation is a great tool that would allow me to create annotations on my screen while I'm screen sharing. But it also allows participants to annotate on my screen while I'm screen sharing. We can turn this off in meeting where I can annotate and I can make it so my students cannot annotate. So this is going to be a personal preference. If you want to annotate, go ahead and turn it on. If you have no intentions of annotating, I would go ahead and turn it off just so students are not drawing on your screen during a meeting. Another setting to help you manage your online class is allowing participants to rename themselves. I would go ahead and turn this off. When students join and they're in the waiting room, if you are setting that up, I can see exactly who's in there and admit them. I don't want them to change their name in meeting. Allowing them to rename themselves could create issues in that meeting, and I might not know who that student is if they change their name. Breakout rooms is one of my favorite features about Zoom. Please make sure that you have this feature turned on. That way you can assign your students to breakout rooms if needed. So as you can see from this video, Zoom has a ton of online settings that we can enable or turn off as needed. I would encourage you to go through this list. It is a very lengthy list, but there's tons of options that allow us to customize our Zoom meetings to meet our students' needs. Now that I've taken the time to customize my settings to match my teaching style and the classes that I'm instructing, it's time to actually see what options we have while students are in the meeting with us. First area I want to focus on is the security icon. So inside of here, I can do a couple of things. Anytime you see a check mark, that means that it's currently enabled. Anytime you don't have a check mark, these features are turned off. So right now you can see that I have enabled a waiting room. I could turn this off if I wanted to in meeting, which would allow students to freely join my class. Currently, I have set it up so participants are allowed to chat and they are allowed to unmute themselves. And I currently have the following features turned off. Participants cannot screen share and they cannot rename themselves. So I can change these at any point in the meeting. So let's say I let everybody in my meeting, there was no inappropriate usernames, and now that they're in, I want them to rename themselves. Maybe I want to go with a first name, last name style, which is just going to help me with attendance. So everybody's in, I could select rename themselves. And now that I have that check mark, they have the ability to do this. Maybe I give it a few seconds, everybody's renamed themselves appropriately, and I can go ahead and turn that feature off. So now no one can change their name, they would have to stick with what is currently on the screen. I could do the same thing with any of these features. Maybe at a certain point in my lesson, I want the students to chat, and then the rest of the time I'd like to turn that off. So I can change these back and forth as my meeting progresses. The next area I'd like to focus on is the participant icon. When you select the participant icon, you can see yourself as the host and anybody else that is currently in your waiting room or currently in meeting with you. As the host, I have a couple of in-meeting controls that I can use with my participants. If I go over to this test student and select more, I can do a couple of different things. I can ask them to start their video. This would simply put a message on their screen saying start video. I could make them a host, a co-host. This would probably only be used with other adults. I wouldn't recommend you ever make a student a co-host or host. We have the ability to rename them if I don't agree with their name or they are not following directions. I can stick them in a waiting room, or I can completely remove them from the meeting. The next area I want to focus on is the chat icon. If I select chat, I would be able to chat with my students. The students can chat with me. And again, in my settings, before the meeting begins, I can control who is able to chat with who, or if maybe chatting is allowed at all. I can always change this in meeting by selecting the three dots in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. And you can see currently they can just chat with the host. I can change this in meeting. So let's say I post a question and I want everybody to respond to it. I could do that. After everybody responds, I could change it back to host only if I wanted to. After there is at least one message in the chat area, I can also go to the three dots and select Save Chat. This would allow me to download a file of everybody that chatted, so this could be a good way of taking attendance. If you ask students to simply state their name, I could download this and go back and reference everybody that was in attendance. Another important feature to consider in meeting is share screen. Most of the time when I share my screen, I feel like I'm typically going to share my Google Chrome browser. This would allow me to share anything on Google Chrome, and I could also switch between different tabs. One thing I would like you to think about is this setting right down here, Share Computer Sound. If I plan on sharing a video from YouTube, for example, my students will not be able to hear the audio until I select this feature. I can also hit Optimize Share Screen for video clips. This just makes things look a lot clearer for my students. Up at the top, you can see we are on Basic currently. I can head over to Advanced. This would allow me to capture just a portion of my screen if I didn't want to share the whole thing. And I can also share content from a second camera. So if you have a document camera in your room, we can get that set up so you can screen share the contents underneath that document camera. Now that we've decided to screen share with our students, now that we've decided to screen share in a meeting, there's a few tools that we should understand. You'll notice when you screen share that we're going to have this toolbar. This toolbar is great because it still allows me to take a look at all of those features in security. It still allows me to take a look at my participants, and I can manage those participants. I can stop this screen share and go directly to another screen share. So if I wanted, I could screen share my Chrome browser like I'm doing now, and then jump to my document camera if I wanted to. I can stop screen share at any time, and there's lots of options in More. When I go to More, the first thing I come across is the chat. So I'm able to have the chat open while I'm screen sharing. I can go back to those three dots and I can save my chat and change who is able to chat with who. I can go ahead and record to my computer or record to the cloud. If I needed to, I can find meeting information. I can create breakout rooms. One thing that you might want to consider is hiding the floating meeting control, which is this up here. You'll notice that where it's located, it's blocking a lot of my tabs. I won't be able to jump back and forth between them. So you could always hide floating meeting controls, which would take this away. And all I have to do is hit escape and it brings it right back for me. An easier option is just to click and drag, and I can move this anywhere on my screen. So it's now out of the way and I can access all of my tabs. The last few things I can do with my meeting controls is I could go ahead and share computer sound if I forgot to check that before I screen shared, and I can optimize that screen as well. I can end the meeting directly from here, or I can just go ahead and hit stop share and it would take me back to where I can see everybody in the whole group. The last feature I want to talk about is breakout rooms. Breakout rooms is great. It allows me to put students in individual rooms if they need a quiet spot to work. It allows me to pair students up and they can work with other students in their class. And I have the ability to jump back and forth between all of my different breakout rooms. This is a setting that has to be enabled before we can use it, but it is a powerful tool that I would definitely consider.